This video is sponsored by JNC Collectibles website at jnccollectibles.com. Be sure to check them out for all your TCG needs, from sealed products to sleeves to playmats. Link is in the description box below. Thank you, and back to the video.
Hey, what's up, JNC? How's everybody doing? Here is JNC member Jib, and I'm coming to you guys today with a video talking about the future of the game, basically, and getting ready. We're in the national season. We're getting ready for the NAWCQ, European WCQ. We have nationals going on every weekend right now. We're basically at the end of this season, and going into the WCQ season, we're gonna have a new set legal, being Infinite Forbidden. Infinite Forbidden is the next Yu-Gi-Oh! Core set. It is coming out the weekend of the NAWCQ. We don't know if we're going to have it for the NAWCQ, but it's safe to assume because it is coming out that weekend. It wouldn't be a real reason for us not to have it. And today I'm coming at you guys with a list of cards that I think that you guys should look out for going into the NAWCQ season. So the first group of cards are the Millennium cards. It's a group of retrains from old vanillas from the Dual Monster period, and it's basically archetype revolved around Exodia, the Forbidden One, or a new fusion monster for Exodia, the Forbidden One. But we don't really care about that. We care about the actual Millennium monsters, being Caveman from the Millennium, Golem, and Shield, and basically the Shrine of Webju, which is Rhoda, basically, for this archetype. It's just an advantage archetype that puts monsters on the board. They all can summon themselves from this. They can all put themselves in the spell and trap card zone from your hand, and then summon themselves by paying 2,000 life points for our purposes. There's another card that's in the archetype that you can reveal in your hand in order to not pay 2,000 life points, but we don't want to play additional bricks. So yeah, they're all extenders. This one is a starter card, being able to, when it summons, search another Millennium monster. This card, when it summons, searches the field spell, which the field spell places another monster from your hand into the spell and trap card zone in order to put a Millennium monster from your deck into your spell and trap card zone. So that's how you usually tutor into the shield. Not every deck is playing all three. From what I've seen in the OCG, a lot of decks are only playing these two monsters with a 3-1 ratio or a 3-3-1 ratio, and just getting free advantage. The reason why you wouldn't necessarily want to play all three, I would assume, is because obviously you're paying 2,000 life points per monster. So if you summon all three, then you're at 2,000 life points, and it's very easy for you to be killed on the first turn of your opponent. So maybe just paying half your life points is like fine for 2 free bodies in order to do anything with these cards. Have no restriction. The next set of cards is another new archetype called Whitewood. It's another archetype in the Diabellstar lore that revolves around monsters summoning themselves and getting effects by sending spell and trap cards from your hand or field to the graveyard. So this archetype is fairly interesting. It's a synchro-based archetype, and the spells and traps that are relevant are the Legends of the Whitewoods and Woes of the Whitewood. These are the main two that we're talking about. And the goal of this archetype is to spam the board with synchro monsters and use this trap in order to synchro summon on the opponent's turn. The deck has its own interruption in the form of Silvera, which is basically a callback to the Silvera trap card. It even has the wolves in it, but I guess when they were so good. But I digress. This card is like a Book of Eclipse when it's special summoned. We also have this monster, which searches a Whitewood card, and then this card is absolutely insane. It's probably a ban-worthy card in the future, but at the moment it's a little underpowered. It's called Diabell, Fiendess of the Whitewoods, and when this card is summoned, you discard a spell or trap in order to add a spell or trap from your graveyard to your hand. It can add back any spell or trap from your graveyard back to your hand, and then during the opponent's turn you can send a spell or trap from your hand or field to the graveyard. It's a special summon a level 7 or lower synchro tuner from your extra deck. So the way that the archetype works is you're supposed to summon the Silvera because it is a tuner, and this card triggers on special summon in order to Book of Eclipse your opponent's field. But you can do some crazy stuff, like obviously a card that comes to mind is Formula Synchron, or even like the Crystron card that's like a level 4 tuner that's a quick synchro. So you can do some cool wacky stuff with these cards. This card is definitely something to look out for. It's this generic level 8 synchro that adds a spell or trap from your graveyard back to your hand. So there's definitely something there. It's a cool archetype. Out the gate, do I expect it to be extremely competitive? Not particularly. I think it's going to perform a little bit better than it has in the OCG just because we don't have Max C, and this deck special summons a lot. But without Baron the floor, this deck doesn't really have a early way to play around Nibiru. So we're going to have to see. This deck should be getting more waves of support. So maybe in the future it'll become a high tier meta, but it's definitely something that I would pick up and look out for. The next set of cards is probably the most, I wouldn't say the best set of cards in the next set, but it's definitely the most toxic set of cards in the next set. And this is a deck that potentially on the channel, if we get this video to 50 likes, I'll make an entire video dedicated to this archetype. Is Gimmick Puppets. Gimmick Puppet is pretty toxic. It's basically Konami's attempt of creating their own FTK. So usually the player base comes up with FTKs, but this is Konami saying, well, we're going to make an FTK deck, which is very interesting, and these cards are very good. So Gimmick Puppet is a rank 8 toolbox spam deck that basically your goal is to deal 8,000 damage to your opponent on the first turn, and this deck is fairly efficient at doing that. Before this wave of support, Gimmick Puppet is kind of known for Gimmick Puppet and Nightmare being played in other decks in order to lock your opponent out of special summoning stuff from Gimmick Puppets. But now Gimmick Puppet is kind of going back to their original purpose, even from the anime, which was basically an FTK deck. So these cards facilitate FTKs. We have a new Broken Field spell, Mansion of the Underworld Dolls, which basically makes it searches a Gimmick Puppet monster on activation, and then it also protects all your Gimmick Puppet monsters from non-XYZ monster effects for some reason. So all monster hand traps don't work on your Gimmick Puppets, and then it has a third effect to detach an Xyz material from a Xyz monster you control, and then summon a monster from your graveyard to either player's field. So this card is very good, and I expect to see this deck pop off in the WCQ season, and definitely it is a deck that I would be prepared for, because I think if you're not prepared for this deck will cook you. We can also talk about the extra deck monsters. We have Fantastic Machina, and then it's Chaos Xyz form. This card is also insane. When this card, you can detach the Xyz material from this card to search any rank up magic spell from your deck to your hand, and it gives you an additional normal summon. So, and it summons itself back from the graveyard and adds back a rank up magic when you special summon a Gimmick Puppet XYZ. So this card is insanely broken. I'm a big fan of these two cards, and this card on summon searches our new Gimmick Puppet Trap, which is basically a snap seal. So if for some reason you're unable to FTK, you still have interruption, and then it pops when a monster is special summoned, you can pop it and then deal damage equal to half its attack. So very solid cards, definitely something to look out for. And if you're a fan of the Zexal anime like myself, or just a big fan of Gimmick Puppets in general, these are definitely cards to pick up. Gimmick Puppet players are eating. This is definitely, I would say, like a tier 2 archetype in my opinion. The next 3 cards I want to talk about, this is an honorary, but the new Tenpai cards. So we're getting 2 new direct Tenpai supports and then 1 indirect, but this is really for Tenpai cards. So we're getting Doro Drake and a new Tenpai Dragon Genroku, and then we're getting Sengen Koyo. So this card searches any level 4 or lower fire dragon on normal summon, and this card, when it's added from your deck to your hand, special summons itself, and then you can tribute it in order to summon a Tenpai Dragon from your deck. So these 2 cards are basically just meant to work with each other, and they add a whole new level of consistency to the Tenpai deck, because one of the issues with the Tenpai deck right now is the consistency, and these cards just boost the consistency by a ton. And having another name that can tag itself out into any name that you need is pretty nice, and I think it's a great addition to the deck. Then Sengen Koyo, I'm probably butchering the name, but basically it says during the main phase, if all monsters you control are fire dragons minimum 1, and your opponent has more monsters than you do, end the main phase. So this card basically forces your opponent into the battle phase and skips their main phase. It's an interesting card. It's not something you would main deck, but it's definitely a side deck option for I don't know if I would say the mirror, but other matchups maybe against Snake Eye, you can set this up and then make them skip their battle phase or force them into the battle phase where you can do some of your synchro setups and potentially win the game on the spot. So I think that these three cards are definitely, again, all of the cards that we're talking about today are cards to look out for, and I think that these are a great addition to the Tenpai deck. Then the last for the main archetypes, and the most important card in my opinion in the entire set, and a game warping card on release to the likes that we haven't seen since, in my opinion, Enchantress of the Water Temple, is the Fiendsmith. That's just his name, the Fiendsmith. This is a new set of Light Fiend cards revolved around this one card, so it kind of works like a Wanted Diabellstar engine where it's a bunch of support cards surrounding one particular monster. But unlike Diabellstar, which goes in a lot of different decks, this card can go in pretty much any deck, and it facilitates a lot of crazy stuff. I'm actually missing some cards for the archetype, these two cards, which are important to talk about. So basically what the Fiendsmith does is you can discard it from your hand to add a Fiendsmith spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Then it has another effect, just a separate effect, that you can target a Fiendsmith equipped card you control and one monster your opponent controls, send them both to the graveyard. Then the third effect is if this card is in your graveyard, you can shuffle one other Light Fiend from your graveyard into your deck or extra deck to special summon it. You can only use each effect once per turn. So this card is a doozy. This card has three effects. It searches a card, it summons itself, and its removal going second. This card is just insane. Then we have Track This, which is it searches a Light Fiend, then discards a card, and then in the graveyard you can banish it to fusion summon a Fiendsmith fusion monster. And then we have Sanctus, which basically summons a token. And the reason why that is relevant is because of this card being Fiendsmith Requiem. Fiendsmith Requiem takes one Light Fiend. You can only special summon it once per turn. During the main phase quick effect, you can tribute it to special summon one Fiendsmith monster from your hand or deck. So this card tutors this card from your deck, which then gets your whole loop going. You have the Link 2, which takes two monsters including a Light Fiend. And then during the main phase, you can fusion summon a fusion monster by a fiend fusion monster by shuffling material back into the deck. Then you have the level 6 monster, which takes two Light Fiends, and then on summon it special summons a Light Fiend from your graveyard or banishment, or adds it to your hand. And then we have the big fusion monster, which while equipped with a Link monster quick effect, once per turn you can negate cards face up on the field up to the number of equips it has. So just a very solid set of cards. And these cards can go into any deck, and they're tutored through Requiem. And the question you might be asking is, how do I tutor it through Requiem? So in the OCG, they have this card called Moon of the Closed World. It's basically like a smaller version of Underworld Goddess, and it takes two effect monsters. So this is very reminiscent of what was done in 2018 and 2019 when it came to Nightmare Mermaid plus any Nightmare monster, where you would go into a Nightmare monster to go into Mermaid in order to tutor Orcus Nightmare from your deck. And that saw a lot of play in a lot of different decks in 2018, early 2019. And it was incredible, and that was kind of the reason why Mermaid got banned. And this is of the same pedigree, where you're turning any two monsters in your deck into Moon of the Closed World, which then tutors you into Fiendsmith Requiem, which then summons Fiendsmith from your deck, and then that plus any other monster turns into the Link 2, which then shuffles two guys back into your deck to summon the fusion. Then the fusion will summon back Fiendsmith, then you can make any rank 6, so you can make like Beatrice, you can make Beatrice, dump Snake Eyes, then make Promethean. Like, you can do a lot of different things in a lot of different decks with this. And I think the potential's almost limitless. Like, these cards are game warping in my opinion. But that kind of revolves around us getting Moon imported in the Battles of Legends set, which we get next month, a month before the Infinite Forbidden. Because this card can be in Infinite Forbidden as an import, or it could be in the Battles of Legends set as a import. But if we do not, for some reason, if we do not get Moon of the Closed world. Obviously, the Fiendsmith cards are slightly worse, but I think they're still very good. You probably would just have to play more copies of Tractus and play Sanctus. That's why I said that Sanctus might be important, because right now in the OCG you don't have to play Sanctus because you have Moon, so you can just turn any 2 monsters into Fiendsmith cards. But if you don't have access to Moon, then you might have to play at least 1 copy of Sanctus as a 1 card turns into this Fiendsmith engine. So that's it for the Fiendsmith cards, and that's it for all the main cards that I think are important to talk about. Then in the side deck over here, I have some like smaller supports for different archetypes and individual cards that I might think have some impact on the game. First, the Memento cards. I'm not going to stand here and tell you I know a lot about this archetype, but I do know that these cards, especially the Fusion Monster, I played against this card one time. It definitely increases the ceiling of the deck a little bit. The deck already had consistency, but it lacked powers. These cards definitely help with that. We have the Drytron cards, which is a archetype that is near and dear to me, and I love this archetype. And I will tell you that this card is amazing. I love this card. This is really what Drytron, I think, needed. It's weird because the restriction on the card kind of stops you from doing things with Ben 10 and Herald, so maybe you have to play less copies of that. But this card in general for Drytrons as an archetype is amazing. It's an S tier card. Same with this card. This card is very good for Drytrons. Definitely something to look out for all my Drytron players. Shout out to Justin. We have this card, which is like a new Maxi. It's like a weaker Maxi, but it's still a solid card. Is eventually going to see play. 100% eventually we'll see play. It's a very powerful card, but I don't know if it will see play on release, but it's definitely something to look out for. We have this card. I'm not even going to try to pronounce its name, but it's something for Floowandereeze, which is an archetype that many people hate, and this card is just an annoying card that Floowandereeze can play. We have the new Light and Darkness Dragon retrains. These cards are not important after Infinite Forbidden, but I believe that these cards will become a lot more important once we get the Light Duelist pack with the Tachyon cards, which is something that we will talk about in the coming months, because I do think the Tachyon cards have potential to be a meta archetype, which is crazy. And these cards are cards that you would play in the Tachyon archetype because they're level 8s, and I think that these cards are definitely something to pick up. They'll probably lower rarity in the set, but I would definitely snag them. Then we have another archetype I love, Madolche. Madolche got new support, 3 new support cards, 2 extra deck cards, and a trap card. All 3 of these cards are excellent for the Madolche strategy, but Madolche's core issues stay the same, being you are kind of restricted in the hand traps that you can play because of Petting Cessor being your best card. Also, the deck has some consistency issues. You have to play bricky cards in your deck that don't do anything on their own, cards like Message Gelato, etc., etc. But I think that these cards are S-level cards for the Madolche archetype, and I can see Madolche popping off. It's definitely something that I'll mess around with. Then we have Tape here. So this card is a card that is sadly overlooked by how good these cards are up here, but this card is also, in my opinion, an S tier card and a card that will 100% see meta play in the future. It is basically a card that takes 2 effect monsters, and when it's summoned, you can set a continuous trap directly from your deck that has the effect to special summon itself. So there are a lot of like continuous traps that special summon themselves that have really cool and generic effects that can do stuff, and I think that this card will eventually see meta play. It'll probably see meta play on release, but it'll kind of be low key. But this card eventually will be like the go-to card for extra deck go first decks. Once the power level of going first is lowered a little bit through banlist, this card will incrementally get better as the card pool gets more shallow, which sounds bad, but it's like fine because this card is very good. And then this card, Dominus Purge. This card is interesting. It has a very weird restriction that after you use it, you can't activate light, water, or fire effects for the rest of the duel. But it negates a card that adds a card from your opponent's deck to their hand, and you can use it from your hand. So it's like an imperm that like negates add effects. So it's interesting. It'll definitely see play, but it's very restricted in the decks you can see it in, because you basically can't play it in dark, fire, or water decks, or decks that those 3 attributes are very relevant. But it is a card that eventually we'll see play. So that's pretty much it for what I think about the most important cards coming out of Infinite Forbidden. If you guys like this video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the JNC channel. Check out my Twitch, twitch.tv/jib_YGO for more live content with me. Say hi to my chat. My chat was here behaving themselves for me to do this video. And definitely check out the JNC website for merch and apparel. Appreciate you guys. Have a great day. Bye.